two countries on earth that have put counter tariffs against tariffs by the Americans, China and us.
This isn't something you should be proud about. I swear, the Liberals just don't know how to answer questions.
The Prime Minister ran on elbows up, promising dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S. and promising this would generate $20 billion in revenue. It turns out it was actually elbows down, and the Prime Minister broke his promise and secretly cancelled those tariffs. Now Trump is threatening 50% tariffs on Canadian steel, which will devastate Canada's steel industry and put thousands of steel workers out of their jobs. Can the Prime Minister look steel workers in the eye, tell them it wasn't actually elbows down, and how much money his tariffs will actually generate?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
In this House and the Prime Minister, we will fight, Mr. Speaker, against these unjustified and illegal tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium, Mr. Speaker. We're going to protect our workers and our industry, and the Minister of Industry already spoke about that over the weekend. And we're going to build a strong Canada, Mr. Speaker. We're going to build a Canada of tomorrow, a confident Canada, a prosperous Canada, a Canada that we can all be proud of, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
It doesn't matter which Liberal stands up to answer a question in this Parliament or last Parliament. They just actually never answer a question, Mr. Speaker. And it's not complicated. Elbows up was dollar-for-dollar tariffs. Has the Prime Minister already broken his promise to steelworkers, or was elbows up simply just fake news? And now we're facing the Trump tariffs, and steelworkers from coast to coast to coast are in serious jeopardy of losing their jobs. It's a simple question. How much money from these quote-unquote elbows-up tariffs have they generated?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
There's a lot of anxiety across the country, particularly when it comes to the steel and aluminum sectors. That's why over the weekend I've been in contact with industry leaders as well as union leaders, and we will continue to make sure that we protect their jobs. In order to be in solution mode, Mr. Speaker, we will make sure that Canadian steel and aluminum is used in our major infrastructure projects. That is why steel workers have said over the weekend, at a time where our steel and aluminum sectors are being hit by massive U.S. tariffs, this is the kind of leadership we've been demanding, and it has delivered.
They claim to be protecting Canadian steel jobs, but back in March, plants were already laying off workers, and I can assume it's continued, especially now with these 50% threats.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
To be clear, the Prime Minister promised elbows up against U.S. tariffs. He promised dollar-for-dollar counter tariffs. He promised it would generate $20 billion in revenue, but he broke those promises. He secretly dropped counter tariffs to effectively zero. He stopped fighting back against President Trump pretty early on, and now Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%, a direct attack against our workers, their livelihoods, and the Canadian economy. So if the Prime Minister really is elbows up, if he's really fighting back, can he tell our steelworkers how many dollars have been collected in counter tariff revenue from the U.S.? How many dollars? What's the number, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague and congratulate her for the fact that she will be now my critic. So good news, looking forward to working with her. Indeed, the comments coming out of the White House are preoccupying. That being said, no executive order has been signed yet. So we take these comments very seriously, but we are working on all scenarios. That's why the Prime Minister is in Saskatoon meeting with the premiers of the provinces and territories, and that's also why we will make sure that we execute our plan, fight, protect, and build.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
I didn't hear a dollar amount on revenue from those counter tariffs, so we can assume it's effectively zero. And if the steel tariffs weren't bad enough, the Prime Minister is determined to keep the industrial carbon tax on our steel production, driving up the cost of steel production here at home, which perhaps is really no surprise given the Prime Minister said he claimed that Canadians don't even use that much steel, as if we don't use dishwashers and fridges and cars and pots and pans and baby strollers and housing infrastructure, all of which are made with steel, Mr. Speaker.
You know, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd?
Well, Canada won't be using any steel if these 50% tariffs go through. He constantly contradicts himself, and 50% of the country still voted him in.
How can the Prime Minister claim to be elbows up for workers and fighting for affordability while keeping a punishing carbon tax on our Canadian steel producers?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
We'll take no lesson from the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. We have put in place as a country, as a nation, the largest counter-tariff in our nation history, Mr. Speaker, to protect our workers in the steel industry, in the aluminum industry, in the forestry sector, in all the sectors of our economy to defend our workers and our industry, Mr. Speaker. We should all in this room, in this House, stand proudly to defend Canadian workers, defend Canadian industry, and build Canada strong. That's Canadian, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, aluminum workers in Saguenay are very concerned. The Prime Minister promised Canadians that he would stand up to Americans and their tariffs. And now Mr. Trump is threatening to slap once again a 50% tariff on aluminum. Meanwhile, the Liberal government has reduced tariffs on American products to almost nothing. But the Prime Minister told us he would collect $2 billion. Can Saguenay workers know how much the Prime Minister has collected in counter tariffs to date? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Listen, I understand the anxiety that my colleague has expressed, and this is throughout the aluminum sector, and that's why over the weekend I went to the Aluminum Summit Sunday evening in Montreal to meet with not only industry leaders, but also to talk with the union leaders. We're going to continue to support our aluminum sector in Quebec, and we're going to use aluminum and Quebec steel and Canadian steel in our infrastructure projects. We're going to create jobs, we're going to protect these workers, and we're going to be able to defend our country against this injustice from the White House. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, many Canadians voted for this Prime Minister thinking he would stand up to Mr. Trump. But it didn't take long for him to remove the counter tariffs on American products. Then he said he would be more fiscally responsible, but he presented spending forecasts that even outstripped those of his predecessor. He talks like a conservative, but governs like Justin Trudeau. He says one thing and then does another. When will this Prime Minister stop talking out of both sides of his mouth? The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue. I'm surprised to hear my colleagues' comments. He should be proud that our PM standing up to the President. We did not capitulate. We're standing up to defend workers in this industry. We know how important the aluminum industry is in Quebec. We know the expertise of our workers, and the best aluminum in the world is produced in Canada and Quebec, and we're going to continue to defend this industry and our workers and build a strong country together.
See, that's the thing, though. You didn't stand up to him at all, which is exactly why he's threatening these tariffs again. They are so proud of accomplishing literally nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister promised elbows up, promising dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S. that would collect $20 billion. The Prime Minister broke that promise, giving Canadians elbows down when he dropped the tariffs on the U.S. to effectively zero. Now Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%, attacking Canadian workers, their jobs, their livelihoods, and our industry. Can the Prime Minister tell our steel workers how much has been collected from tariffs on the U.S.?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
The member on the other side is misinformed, but let's talk about the great things we've been doing for Canadians lately. Mr. Speaker, last week we introduced as the first thing in this House a tax reduction for the middle class, Mr. Speaker. 22 million Canadians will benefit from that measure, Mr. Speaker. Not only we did that, but we also make sure that we remove the GST for first-time home buyers on their first house up to $1 million, Mr. Speaker. Those are measures that makes a difference in the life of Canadians. Those are measures that makes a difference in every region of Canada. Those are measures that build a Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
He goes on to say maybe the member across the aisle is misinformed. Well, you guys have given no information, period. Not on the projects you want to build, not on where the money is going, not on who is developing the projects, most likely Brookfield. There has been zero transparency across the board, and now, once again, the Liberals are just parroting the same 5 things over and over again while patting themselves on the back.
Member for Flamborough, Glanbrook, Brant North.
So did you hear that, steel workers in Hamilton? Not a number in that arrogant answer. Well, I don't think that's surprising, given that this is a government whose prime minister believes that Canadians don't actually use steel in their daily lives. But for workers and businesses in my community of Hamilton who are looking for the support that might have come from the revenue of those counter tariffs, they're being left empty-handed, and they are worried about their future. So let me ask again, if the Liberals are truly fighting back, can they tell us how much has been collected from tariffs? How much? Just a number.
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Speaker, we know that there's a lot of anxiety across the country in the steel and aluminum sector, particularly in Hamilton. That's why I was in contact with the CEO of ArcelorMittal, Dofasco, over the weekend, talking to the head also of the Canadian steelworkers, making sure that our MPs also from Hamilton are really on board and as they're fighting for the jobs in their own communities. Mr. Speaker, this rhetoric coming out of the White House is extremely preoccupying, but meanwhile, no executive order has been signed. That's why we'll continue to fight with counter tariffs to protect our workers and to make sure that we build national products.
Promised elbows up. He promised dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S., and he promised he would collect $20 billion in revenue. But in reality, he quietly dropped the tariffs on the U.S., practically to zero. And now Donald Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%. This will destroy our industry and punish our workers. Since the Canadian tax revenue was supposed to support Canadian steel workers, can the Prime Minister tell us how much has he collected so far for jobs in Oxford? And just give us just the number.
The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
Speaker, I would like to see in this House the same movement we've seen with steel workers in the industry, Mr. Speaker. This is a nation where we need to come together as a nation. This is a moment to fight together these unjustified tariffs, Mr. Speaker. This is a time to make sure we protect our industry and our worker. This is a time where we need to build this country, like the Prime Minister is doing with the premiers today in Saskatoon, Mr. Speaker. I just wish in this House that everyone would stand up to defend our industry, defend our worker, and build Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Oxford.
Surprise, surprise, they can't give us a number. And now Trump's 50% tariffs on steel will shut down our plants across our country. Thousands of jobs are on the line. Layoffs have already started in Oxford. There is anxiety on our floor shops and our kitchen tables. And it's not just Trump's tariffs that are killing jobs, it's also the Liberal industrial carbon tax. That's right. If the Prime Minister can't get a deal with Trump on tariffs, will at least give our workers a fighting chance. Remove the Liberal industrial carbon tax today.
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Mr. Speaker, we know that we need to make sure that we fight back with strong counter tariffs against this rhetoric coming out of the White House. But you know what, Mr. Speaker, our strategy has been working. There's only 2 countries on earth that have put counter tariffs against tariffs by the Americans, China and us.
Well, your strategy hasn't worked, actually, because he's coming back with a higher tariff percentage than before, on top of the fact that this isn't something you should be proud about. Going up against our closest ally with China? Well, there you have it. Now you know what the government's priorities are. Anyway, I want to know what you think down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you are new, and thank you very much for watching.